They started out as young men making girls scream on top of their lungs to become the ultimate idols of the 20th century. The Beatles were a band that powered a generation, an inspiration to their fans' minds, styles and beliefs. The four working-class lads from Liverpool became the greatest band of all time, combining poetical lyrics and a unique, energetic sound. It all started in 1956 in Liverpool, England, when guitarist and singer John Lennon formed a skiffle group called the Quarrymen. The band would play at various local events and would even audition for television shows. In July 1957, the Quarrymen were playing at St. Peter's Parish Church when another young lad named Paul McCartney was introduced to John by a mutual friend. John was so impressed by Paul playing and singing Eddie Cochran's 20 Flight Rock that he immediately asked him to join the band. Paul also had a younger friend, the guitarist George Harrison, who, after occasionally filling in with the band, eventually joined them in 1958. At this point, the Quarrymen continued to play smaller gigs, among others a performance at George's brother's wedding. But they still had to find the right drummer. They rehearsed and played with various musicians, but none of them stayed with the band. The search seemed to be over when, after a gig at the Casbah Club in 1959, they were introduced to the owner's son, Pete Best, who was the drummer in another group. In 1960, John asked his best friend Stuart Sutcliffe to join the Quarrymen. Stu played bass guitar, but had never really learned how to play. He had been more interested in pursuing a career in fine arts than in pop music, but he thought being a musician might be fun anyway. In early 1960, the band changed their name to the Moondogs and continued playing shows with a line-up of John, Paul, George, Stu and Tommy Moore, their drummer. They also hired a manager named Alan Williams, who had brought Moore into the band and who began trying to book them. Another name change had Stu suggest the Beatles as an allusion to Buddy Holly's Crickets. Only Williams didn't like the name and wanted them to change it to Long John and the Silver Beatles, which was shortened by John to the Silver Beatles. For a Scotland tour with singer Johnny Gentle, some of the musicians had picked stage names like Paul Ramone, Carl Harrison and Stu DeSteel. After the tour, they returned to Liverpool and filled in on Mondays at Alan Williams' Jacaranda Coffee Bar. Drummer Tommy Moore decided to leave the band to return to his job as forklift driver. Pete Best was asked to join and became their permanent drummer. Williams booked the group for a 2-month assignment in Hamburg. Before they left for Germany, they finally changed their name to the Beatles. From August to October of 1960, the group spent long nights playing as opening act at the Indra Club in Hamburg. They played set after set, night after night, and often had to use uppers to keep them awake on stage. The musicians suffered from poor living conditions and a relentless schedule. Yet they were able to gain some popularity and a fan following with their energetic sound. They soon started performing at a more popular club, the Kaiserkeller, where they played from October until November of 1960. Here, they also met the drummer Richard Starkey, who used Ringo Starr as a stage name and who was playing with a band called Rory Storm and the Hurricanes.
Yeah, okay guys, this is where we got off the train in the Hauptbahnhof and got in a taxi on a rainy Hamburg night. We drove round the corner here and the guy stopped here and we thought, where's the club? He says, down there. Get all your stuff down, your baggage and your guitars and drums and everything. And here's the back door. And you go through there, and you have a sausage, a bockwurst, and you have a beer, and then you start playing. So we started playing and we didn't stop for months. So this is where it all started, in this place down here, the Kaiserkeller. Yes, it's a long time ago. It's like 43 years. Yesterday, of course, yesterday. Yeah, that's where it all started. It was hard work, very hard work, for very little money. We were like slaves. Yeah, very hard work. But we loved it because we wanted to get on the stage and play. Because in England there was no way we could play all night and get money. But here we could play all night and we got some money, a little money. And we slept in a hole with no air. Who needs air? We had beer, we had music, we had each other. Rock and roll. That's the same noise as the old days. You hear that? It's a little early. Oh yes. Thank you very much. The thing about the Kaiserkeller in those days was there was no air, there was no ventilation. So we were playing in this big cloud, a permanent cloud. Everybody smoked in those days. Everybody smoked. But this was a very rough place. You know, people getting kicked and hit and blood and fists, you know, and boom. I was on the stage playing and somebody was getting killed down here and I closed myself up and just carried on playing. I didn't see anything. Rock and roll, man. But this was a violent place in those days because all the kids, you know, from the wartime, like I'm a wartime child too. So the German wartime kids, they were no different. They had problems, psychological problems and aggressive, very aggressive. So we were, being musicians, it was easier to stay alive, you know, because if you play, people like you, because everybody likes music. Even the bad people like music. Even the gangsters, they like music. So we had everybody on our side. But I got a new nose too. I got hit too. Jealous guys, because the girls liked us. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you are now standing in the Star Club. There is the stage over there. There's a wonderful group banging away, making a lot of noise, too loud of course, and the people in the church are worried about the, you know, the vibrations. And, well, this is the Star Club, but I'm afraid after all these years, this is the only thing left. A piece of granite from India, very wonderful granite stone. Yes, and here we have the very famous Gretel and Alphonse, which is the same as it was in the old days. Nothing has changed. It's just the way it was. And this is the pub where all the musicians used to come out of the Star Club. It was not far to go, so we came out of the Star Club and we went in here and we had a few beers and had a talk and talked about the music and blah blah, and came out again and went back in the Star Club and played again. So we were sort of going like this, you know, all night, this way, that way. But this is where we lived in the daytime when we weren't playing. So really we slept up there, we played there, and this is where we had our beer and also sometimes something to eat in here. And the boss is the same guy, Horst. He's still the same man. So nothing has changed. This is the only place which hasn't changed since 1960-62. Gretel and Alphonse. That's it. That's where John Lennon went to the toilet and didn't come out for half an hour. You know, everything was coming out and put it back in again. That was normal in those days. Yeah, in those days, of course, all we wanted to do was make a record. Any record. Just go in the studio and make a record. And we made a record. We made a single with the Beatles called My Bonnie. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. And I went next door to the music store, which is not there anymore, and I bought my own single, 5 marks. I paid 5 marks for my own single. Now I came in here and I was looking at my single, you know, look at it, feeling it. This is my first record. And it was My Bonnie. Very strange version. Because Bert Kempfert said, we got to play something that the Germans know. Because the kids learn at school, you know. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Why don't you bring back my Bonnie to me? That was the introduction in A. Now we did a very innovative thing. We went into C. Rock and roll. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. Why don't you bring back my Bonnie to me? Everybody was singing, bring back, bring. We were rocking and rolling and every night playing the same shit. And to me, hey, bring back, oh, bring back my Bonnie to me. And then this fantastic solo I used to do. How did it go? Etc. It went on and on. And the thing in those days was most of us played guitar. There were other instruments, but the guitar was the easiest to learn. And to play rock and roll, all you need is 3 chords and you can sing most songs, play most songs. But there were a few of us who wanted to do more than that, so we put some strange chords in and we played it differently every time. Any song we did, we played it differently. So this version of My Bonnie that you hear on the record with the Beatles was only one of 2 or 3 we did in the studio. The others have gone. They were lost. So we never did the same song twice. And that kept us from falling down from boredom. And in the afternoon, we'd sort of show each other some new things, you know. How do you do that? How do you play that? Little blues. We had a lot of blues thing going. It wasn't just rock and roll. Blues, folk, ballads, everything. But really, we lived for the music. That's all we wanted to do. Just play and play and play. That's what we did. Play.
Due to a dispute over the contract, the Beatles were forced to leave Hamburg in December. George was found to be underage and was deported, as well as Paul and Pete, who, in protest to their living conditions, had tacked a condom to the wall of the club and set it on fire. Stu left the band to pursue the arts and to live in Germany with his girlfriend, Astrid Kirchherr, who also took the now famous black and white photographs of the early Beatles. Kirchherr and her friends are also said to have inspired the famous Beatle mop top. Back in Liverpool in 1961, the Beatles started playing the Cavern Club, a location where small bands were featured. The breakthrough came with Brian Epstein, the owner of a local record shop. He had stopped by to hear a luncheon show and immediately offered to become the band's manager. In 1962, Epstein set up an audition at the Decca record company, but the Beatles were rejected with a statement that guitar groups are on the way out. Shortly after, John received the terrible news that his friend Stuart Sutcliffe had died of a stroke at the age of 21, probably the result of a brawl Sutcliffe and John had been in back in Liverpool. On the 4th of June 1962, the Beatles signed a contract with Parlophone Records, a branch within EMI. 2 days later, they started recording their first sessions at the EMI studios, later renamed the Abbey Road Studios. Their producer George Martin convinced them that they needed a new drummer. Pete Best was replaced by Ringo Starr, and the band continued recording. On the 5th of October 1962, the Beatles released their first single, Love Me Do. It climbed up to number 17 in the charts. In February 1963, they recorded their first album, Please Please Me, in 3 sessions totaling 11 hours. They released the title single in March, and 2 months later it reached number 1 in the Melody Maker charts. The band continued to put out hit after hit. She Loves You, From Me to You, and I Want to Hold Your Hand. They played the London Palladium in October, and for the first time the term Beatlemania was used to describe the agony and ecstasy among the fans. In November, the Beatles played a Royal Command performance with the Queen in the audience, when John delivered his famous quip, "Those of you in the cheap seats, if you would clap along, and the rest of you, if you could just rattle your jewelry." At the end of 1963, the group released their second album, With the Beatles. In 1964, they did what no other British group had done before. They conquered the US music scene with I Want to Hold Your Hand as number 1 in the American charts.
No, I had one yesterday.
Which one are you? Eric. Eric? It's not for me, it's for Paul. I'm doing a Eric, here is the American public.
I'm John.
You're John.
It's only a joke.
Yes, well, John, here is the American public. 40 million American viewers.
It only looks like one man to me.
Staring you right in the face.
Oh, it's the cameraman.
What is your impression of the American public? You've been here for a while now.
They're the wildest.
Why?
Well, I don't know. Tonight was, marvelous, ridiculous. Well, there was 8,000 people all shouting at once, and we were trying to shout louder than them with microphones, and we still couldn't beat them.
Was America something like what you thought?
The musicians held a press conference and charmed the American press with their wit and the way they carried themselves, despite their extravagant hairstyle.
The Beatles came over to our country, and I watched them on television as they were singing. Now, I couldn't hear what they were singing because the young people were screaming so loud.
Have you got a song for them when they get here?
Yeah.
Let's hear it.
We love you, Beatles. Oh, yes, we do. We don't love anyone as much as you. When you're not with us, we're blue.
They were received by a gigantic crowd of teenagers, screaming, crying, and trying to get a glimpse of the Fab Four they had fallen in love with.
I spent over $20 on their records and stuff.
Well, what is there about the Beatles that you like?
They're gorgeous. They're beautiful. They got that certain something.
Oh, it's the real thing because the hotel manager of the Whittier Hotel and the Muhlenbach Hotel signs an affidavit certifying that this is the Beatle bedding they slept on, and who slept on what sheet and belongs to who, Ringo, George, or Paul.
Now, when you get these things cut up into 1 square inches apiece, what are you going to do with them?
Sell them.
And the name of it is A Sprout of a New Generation. It shows Paul McCartney coming up from the earth, like a sprout, a start, a new dawn. You see, the Beatles are the original. They started the look, everything. And they are the greatest group out. And here is, see, if you notice, he's like growing. And and I like the oil paint, and I love to present his paints in the pool, and I love him to have it, and I love to meet him, because,
Do you think you have any chance of meeting him?
Well, I don't really know. It's really a luck, because a lot of people meet them because they know somebody. So I would like to get Paul this and show him I'm a true fan, and that, you know, and that I wouldn't tear him apart, speak to him like a decent human being, and that he's really the greatest in show business.
It sounds like you have sort of a crush on Paul McCartney.
Yes, that's true. I love all the Beatles, so Paul's my favorite.
Soxer is a girl who wears bobby socks and is the typical teenage girl. And we put the name the Beatles right across the sock because we think that the girls in America are going to want to be associated with the Beatles, and that is certainly evidenced by what you've seen around here in the last day. And distribution of this kind runs into tens of thousands of dozens a week. We can ship these starting Monday, literally. We will put out socks starting Monday, right through our plant. We're in production now. As a matter of fact, we might have jumped the gun a little bit. We've already sold some of these. Nothing's in writing, but they're sold. We have appointments to move on. Now, we're ready to go.
Later, they performed on The Ed Sullivan Show in front of the largest audience in television history. After a short vacation in Florida and other appearances in public, they returned to Britain. They were now more successful than they would ever have imagined to be.
George, the fans obviously enjoyed it over there. I assume the press enjoyed it. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, it was marvellous. Yeah, everything. Every bit of it was a knockout.
Even the work?
Yeah, we enjoyed it. It was different.
Yeah.
Working in different places with the audience all around us, and, it was a novelty.
What impressed you most about the place? Did you have time to take anything in properly?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I think I enjoyed the sun in Miami most of all. Healthy.
You're the healthy one of the four.
No, but the sun was sort of very healthy. Yeah, very healthy.
Did you have a chance to get away from anybody at any time on the trip?
Yeah.
You got away from me twice.
What did you most like about the trip, Ringo?
Oh, I just loved all of it, especially Miami. The sun, I didn't know what it meant until I went over there.
Didn't you get it up in Liverpool?
No, they finished up there, Put it out.
Did you ever have a chance, John, to just get away on your own without anybody recognising you?
We borrowed a couple of millionaires' houses,
Well, you did. You could afford to buy a couple of millionaires' houses, couldn't you?
No, we're sooner borrow them, it's cheaper. And we did a bit of water skiing. Well, sort of. Anyway.
Yeah, we had a very
Did your wife enjoy it over there?
Yeah, she loved it. Who?
Don't tell him he's married.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry about that. I didn't need that. What about the taste of the fans over there? Did you find the same stuff?
You never been
Yeah. It was, we expected them to be very different, but they weren't at all. Yeah. The accent was the only thing, you know, it was the only difference. Did they reckon you sang in an English accent or American? No, some fella said, how come, because you're from Britain and you still sing an American accent or something? So we've been trying to explain it to him.
We are American, you know, we wouldn't believe it.
When you came back from France, you told me that they like to sort of quicker numbers. Yeah. But what do? You just do all the same routine as you do here?
Yeah.
Because
we did the old
the records that are hits over there. The ones that
oh yeah, we had to do Please Please Me over there. Yeah. And we haven't been doing that for a long time here, but it's in the chart.
That's history, yeah. I hear anyway that the four of you are going to be millionaires by the end of the year.
that's nice.
Have you got time? Have you got time to actually spend this money?
What money?
Well, what's so special about them that makes you come out here on such a horrible day?
Well, they're just, they're great. The sound's different.
Do you think they're the best there's ever been?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Would you like to grow up to be a Beatle?
Yeah. Shut up. Yeah.
On the set of Hard Day's Night in London, England.
After the band had returned home, they started shooting their first motion picture, A Hard Day's Night. The film was released and acclaimed by both critics and fans. The picture portrayed the Beatles as themselves in their daily life as superstars, but it also displayed their winning charm and humor. Their third album was released as a soundtrack along with the film in 1964 and included #1 hits like Can't Buy Me Love and A Hard Day's Night. Their fourth album, Beatles for Sale, was released the same year. In 1965, the Beatles received MBEs, Members of the Order of the British Empire, from the British Crown, which created quite a stir in Britain. This decoration and honor had always been reserved for war heroes and other distinguished Englishmen.
Early in the new year, and you're going to top the bill on the Ed Sullivan Coast to Coast show. John, so far, all British pop stars have not made a tremendous impact on the States. How do you think you're going to fare?
Well, I can't really say, can I? I mean, is it up to me? No. I mean, I just hope we go all right, you know.
Are you going to vary your act at all for the American audience?
No, I mean, we haven't really got an act, so we'll just do what we do. Stand there, sing and twitch.
There have been a number of stories in the press recently about you being under some nervous strain. Is there any truth in this?
No. No truth whatsoever.
In July, the Beatles released their second motion picture, Help, which features a crazy plot about a magical ring. The movie, done in the style of British comedies, again displayed the classic Beatle charm and wit. The fans were delighted.
We don't mind, you know.
The soundtrack album was released along with the film, and both title track and album reached #1.
We love them, so they can.
In August, the Beatles performed in the huge Shea Stadium in New York City in front of 55,600 fans. At that time, a world record for pop concerts.
I think people ask us every day.
By the end of 1965, the group released their sixth album, Rubber Soul. This record marked the transformation of their style and a new depth of meaning in the song lyrics.
What's it feel like to come back to a big civic reception like this?
Very nice.
Did you ever imagine that this day was coming?
Never like this. I mean, you know, we used to come here spotting the plane numbers and things. I never imagined, you know, we'd come back to this.
Well, now, you've all made a fortune. Have you got any future ambition in mind?
Oh,
no, I don't want to borrow any, John. Have you got any future in mind now? Any other ambitions?
I don't know. I would like to make more films, I think. We'd all like to do that because it's good fun, you know. It's hard work, but you can have a good laugh in films.
What about you, Ringo?
Same, I enjoy films.
You did?
Well, I think, you know, all of us want to do sort of a good film, you know, one that we all think's good, and make more good records.
Don't you think this one's any good?
Well, it's okay, you know what I mean. But make good records.
Not as good as James Bond, though, is it?
Oh, not as good as James Bond.
You fancy yourselves as actors, then, do you?
No, definitely not.
You?
But, I mean, we enjoyed making the last film, and especially with the director. The director was great, you see, and it made it much easier for us. None of us rate ourselves as actors, but, you know, it's a good laugh and we enjoy doing it. So we'd like to make a couple more.
Jolly good. Now, it's about 7 months since you were in Liverpool last, appearing.
Officially.
Yeah. And some of the fans have been saying that, you know, they feel that you've deserted them. What do you feel about that?
Mainly the ones that never came to us. The people that are moaning about us not being here are people that never even came to see us when we were here. You know, we could count on our fingers the original fans we had here, the ones that really followed us. And most of them gave up being teenagers anyway. They're all sort of settled in different things. The ones that are moaning never probably came to see us about once.
The only thing is
after we'd made records.
The only thing is that we've got to do a lot from London, because a lot of the TV shows are down in London, you know, and so we're forced to do a lot down in London. I mean, it's like someone said the other day, why doesn't Harry Seacombe go to Cardiff? You know, he never does, but no one ever moans about Harry never going to Cardiff. You know what I mean?
Doesn't he go now, Harry?
He doesn't go back to Cardiff very often.
Oh,
no!
We have always thought that it might be a good question to put to Mr. Kenneth Dodd and the members of the Beatles. To what extent do they attribute their success to their hairstyles? And we'll start by asking that question now of Mr. Ken Dodd.
We call it her in Liverpool, you see. We always had the Judy with the fur her. we have a fellow went into one of those shops once in Liverpool where they sell those, you know, minks and things. And he says, the girl, he said, give us one of those hairy coats. She said, I beg your pardon, sir, what fur? He said, for the Judy. Who do you think?
Do you think that he owes a lot of his success to his hairstyle, fellas?
No, I don't think it helped at all.
It probably would have been better if he was bald.
No, but with the teeth, I think the teeth on the hair, all the gimmicks, you know, I think you have to have I think you definitely have to have a gimmick.
Oh, yes. The nose?
You've all got gimmicks, haven't you, Lloyd? Eh? What about the nose, yeah? What about the nose? He's a Martian. Actually, we were writing this film script for the boys. You know, the boys are making this new film, and we've been writing the script. And actually, we've cast Ringo in the part of King Charles on account of the thing, you know. And he goes along to Nell Gwyn and pinches their jaffas and.
Tell us more about this picture. We didn't know about this.
Oh, yes, we've written the thing. I'm writing the part. I'm writing the script, yes.
New deal.
Yes. with Notty Ash University, you know, to help the people, the professors there. He's King Charles. John is a courtier, and in this film, he wears a long golden wig with all beautiful curls.
Very nice.
And a blue velvet jacket. And like sort of knickerbockers with lace round the bottom, and buckle shoes with diamante clips on. And he's sort of walking around on the film set, and there's a policeman standing at the side, and he said, we'll pinch him when he comes off.
What's he supposed to be doing, though? I mean,
well, John, he's a peasant, he's an evil son. Sorry. Thingy, he's an evil-spelling peasant.
An evil-spelling peasant. Yes. Why is he an evil-spelling? Why is he an evil-spelling peasant?
Comes down where I am.
Finished.
Oh, he's a jester, you see. And he's always making the king laugh. Every time he stands in his head, the king laughs like anything. He wears a kilt.
Getting back to this group, Ken, have you no ambitions to form a group yourself?
Look, with the boys.
Yes.
Kenny and the
Kenny and the
or Doddy and the Ditty Man.
Yeah, what about yourself? Would you
Ringo and the layabouts.
Would you not form one yourself, Ken?
Yes, I'd like to, yes, because the only thing is I'd have to change my name, you see. I'd have to have a name like Cliff or Rock, something earthy. Well, I don't know, eh?
Cliff Dodd.
No. Rock Dodd? No, let's invite suggestions for an earthy name for me.
Yeah, well, what about that, fellow?
Eh?
Dodd.
はいはい。これどこ？こちらはですね。上田君。はい、どうも久しぶりにございました。しばらくです。六本木にございますキャバンクラブでございますね。ビートルズが勝ってリバプールでですね出てした立っておりました。もうその6位、これはもう書き以上の風になります。早速お続けしてまいりましょう。曲は All My Lovin'。Close your eyes and I kiss you. Tomorrow I miss you.
John, George, Harold, George. Just on the left. Just on the left. Right, George.
Here, hold here.
Then to the left.
On the left. This way?
Now, John. Oh, sorry, come back in. Yes.
Well, my name is Derek. Nice to meet you.
Hello, Eric.
Welcome to Japan. Well, I'll be the MC for your show at, well, I have a few questions. You have a good sleep?
Yes, fine.
Did you have any knowledge about Japan before coming here?
A little.
Yes, a little bit, not much though.
About as much as we know about most places we go to.
I see. Well, how the Japanese fans?
Great. Seem very great. Yeah, we get lots of letters from Japan.
Oh, but you didn't meet them at the airport?
No, I didn't say a thing. We came in. It's amazing security. I've never seen so many people guarding it.
And so we don't want you to be hurt or anything.
No.
So we're trying our best.
But we don't want the security to hurt the fans, Don't get too rough with them.
And, I understand you met your queen. And what was the impression?
Oh, she's okay.
Very good. Yes, one of the best.
How did you feel when you received the medal?
It was nice.
Tired, early in the morning. About 10 o'clock.
You had to get up. You hate to get up?
We don't like to get up too early.
As
we don't go to bed so late.
And what musician and composer do you respect most?
No, I don't know, really. John Lennon.
Oh, God. And Paul's marriage, question.
It's not true.
It's not true.
It's wrong. It's George's marriage.
George's marriage.
These three are married.
How many times do you wash your hair in a week?
About once.
Once in a week.
It depends,
Depends how dirty you get.
Depends what you
cut
do.
them often?
That's the same, whenever you feel like it. You don't do it every week, you don't do it every month, it just happens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So now what do we do?
Oh, now say goodbye.
Revolver, the seventh album, was praised by critics and fans alike and showed that the Beatles' songwriting continued to improve. Again, their musical style had grown and expanded, using different influences to create a new sound.
東京ヒルトンホテル10階プレジデンシャルスイート1005号室で最高クラスの超豪華な設備を誇っていました。午後3時20分、4人はメロンを食べウイスキーコークを飲んだ後、東京ヒルトンホテル地下の真珠の間で共同記者会見に臨みました。時差の違いで疲れてはいても明るく振る舞うビートルズでした。インタビューは代表質問の形をとって行われました。多くの質問に一言ずつ考えながらジョークを交え陽気に答えるビートルズの姿は実に爽やかなものでありました。4人の服装はというと、リンゴは黄色の地に薄い縦縞の入った上着に黒いスラックス、モッツルック典型のシャツに黒いネクタイ、ジョージはワインレッドのビロードの上着にベージュのスラックス、ポールはモスグリーン色のモッツルックのスーツ、シャツは薄いブルーで ネクタイは紺地に白い花模様。ジョンはサーモンピンクのスーツ、シャツは紫の字に玉虫模様という派手な服装です。質問は東京音楽記者会、雑誌芸能記者クラブ、外国特派員協会の3団体の代表によって行われました。あなた方には熱狂的なファンが多く、歌が聞こえなくても満足しているようだが、どう思っているのかという質問に、歌を聴きたいときはレコード、僕たちを見たいときはコンサート、ファンは分かっているんだと答えたのが印象。ファン8861通にも上り、想像を絶する人気ぶりでした。武道の殿堂が初めてコンサート会場になったのです。午後6時39分、黒のキャデラックに乗ったビートルズの4人が到着しました。おびただしい報道陣をかき分けて、関係者入り口よりファンの待っているステージへと向かいました。いよいよ待ちに待ったビートルズショーの開幕です。
この3日間の公演で動員された警官が延べ4600名ぐらいだそうでしたね。それから5万人の方が入ったわけですけれども、やはり髪伸ばすことなんか悪いことのような気がしてましたし、必ずしもみんなが歓迎してたわけじゃなかったんですね。
思いますね。
はい、いろいろこうトラブルもありまして、
武力さんなんか来た。
吐き出せなんて話も。
Congratulations, John, George.
Thank you.
Tell me, how did you all react to this?
Well, I went.
Which means in town. Whoopee, well done. George.
Well, I sort of went, wow, that's great.
Now, last year in America, your record sold no less than $10 million worth. Do you think your export sales has something to do with this?
Well, you know, somebody said it might have been that.
The papers keep telling us
it could have been that, but it could have been...
It might have been for tour in Australia. Your plans for tours for this year and next year?
We're going to Europe.
Next week?
Next week.
Sunday.
And then we
John's comments in an interview were taken out of context and threatened the popularity of the group. He was quoted saying that the Beatles were more popular than Jesus.
Just moments ago, John Lennon, one of the 4 members of the rock and roll group The Beatles, said he was misquoted in a magazine article dated February 1966 and released in London. The article claimed that Lennon had said that the Beatles were bigger than Jesus Christ.
I pointed out that fact in reference to England, that we meant more to kids than Jesus did, or religion at that time. I wasn't knocking it or putting it down, I was just saying it as a fact. And it is true, especially more for England than here. You know, but I'm not saying that we're better or greater or comparing us with Jesus Christ as a person or God as a thing or whatever it is. You know, I just said what I said and it was wrong or was taken wrong, and now it's all this.
The Beatles for a long time have been able to, because of their tremendous popularity throughout the world, especially with the younger set, have been able to say whatever they wanted to without any regard for judgment or maturity or the wisdom of it. And no one yet has challenged them to any tremendous degree where it might count.
Oh, I still like them, I guess. I mean, I like the way they write, but every time I hear them sing, I can't help but think about what they said. So I guess it sort of hurt people's feelings, because you know everybody thinks so much of them, and speaking for the teenager, and everybody thought they were so good and all that, and then they come up with something like this, and it just seems like they're making fun of everything. But
this is Doug Layton and Tommy Charles reminding you that our fantastic Beatle boycott is still in effect. Don't you forget what the Beatles have said. And don't forget to take your Beatle records and your Beatle paraphernalia to any one of our 14 pickup points in Birmingham, Alabama, and turn them in this week if possible.
Records and other memorabilia were publicly destroyed.
Spoken to many of the promoters this morning, and when I leave here I have a meeting with several of the promoters who are not anxious that any of the concerts should be cancelled at all. Actually, if any of the promoters were so concerned and it was their wish that a concert should be cancelled, I wouldn't in fact stand in their way. As a matter of fact, the Memphis concert, which is nearest to the place where this broke out, apparently sold more tickets yesterday than they had done up until that date.
We are accountable, of course, to all the citizens of Minneapolis, and we feel for the welfare and safety of their kids, even though they may be a little hysterical and they may go a little overboard for this type of thing. We know where our responsibility lies. As far as Beatle music, I could care about it not one bit myself personally. Some of the members of the troupe, Phil, became very indignant. They told us that Minneapolis was a very narrow-minded town, as were its police officials, and that other cities had been very tolerant to the parties that they had held in their rooms. One of their group with a British accent told me that they would never come back to Minneapolis.
In 1966, the Beatles performed their very last concert in Candlestick Park, San Francisco. It had not been officially announced as their final gig, but afterwards, John said that they had felt like they were a freak show on display. The musicians felt like no one was really listening to them anymore and decided to quit performing in public. The band used new influences and instruments, such as Indian music and the sitar.
Shankar became one of the greatest influences in my life, and still to this day I still rate him as the best musician on the planet that I've actually heard.
It is strange to see pop musicians with sitar. When George Harrison came to me, I didn't know what to think. But I found he really wanted to learn. I never thought our meeting would cause such an explosion. That Indian music could suddenly appear on the pop scene.
In Indian music, it's tied into the spiritual life, and so there's no way you can seriously get involved with the classical ragas of India without finding out what's behind it, and behind everything that has any depth, you'll find the yogis of the Himalayas.
One sits down comfortably in a chair or wherever one wants, and he uses a thought that he has been given especially for himself and starts experiencing the subtler state of thought.
Are you experiencing the subtler state of thought at this moment?
No, I am out in the grot speaking to you.
What do you have to do to obtain this state of thought?
Just a few instructions from a trained teacher, and one begins to experience it.
How long does it take?
About half an hour.
But how do you know when it's happened?
One begins to feel relaxed. Right from the beginning, one begins to feel some improved level of well-being.
You just feel more energetic, just simply for doing work or anything. You just come out.
The Beatles also met the Guru Maharishi Mahesh Yogi at a lecture on transcendental meditation and began to study and meditate with him.
We'd had enough acid. It had done all it could do for us. There was no going any further.
In 1967, the Beatles released their most influential album, the groundbreaking Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. This record is considered by many to be the greatest album in music history. It displays the musical inventiveness of the four musicians as well as their talents as poets. In the same year, the band also performed on a globally televised special representing Britain to an audience of an estimated 350 million people. They sang All You Need Is Love that they had written just for the program.
Drop out of graduate school, drop out of junior executive, drop out of senior executive, turn on, tune in, drop out.
Well, do you think you have now encouraged your fans to take drugs?
I don't think it'll make any difference. I don't think my fans are going to take drugs just because I do. The thing is, that's not the point anyway. I was asked whether I had or not. And then from then on, the whole bit about how far it's going to go and how many people it's going to encourage is up to the newspapers and up to you, on television. I mean, you're spreading this now at this moment. This is going into all the homes, in Britain. And I'd rather it didn't, But you're asking me the question. You want me to be honest. I'll be honest.
But as a public figure, surely you've got a responsibility.
No, it's you've got the responsibility. You've got the responsibility not to spread this now. I'm quite prepared to keep it as a very personal thing, if you will too. If you'll shut up about it, I will.
Shortly after this meeting, Brian Epstein was found dead, killed by an overdose of sleeping pills. He had been increasingly depressed by his lack of involvement with the Beatles as well as a struggle to keep his homosexuality secret.
John, where would you be today without Mr. Epstein?
I don't know.
Are you driving down to London tonight?
Yes, somebody's taking us down.
You heard the news this afternoon, I believe.
Yes.
And Paul's already gone down.
Yes.
I see. You've no idea what your plans are for tomorrow?
No, we'd just go and find out, Just have to play everything by ear.
Yes. I understand that Mr. Epstein was to be initiated here tomorrow.
Yes.
When was he coming up? Was he coming up in the afternoon?
Tomorrow, just Monday, that's all we knew. And he was equally as interested as we are. But he wanted to know about life as much as we do. I spoke to him Wednesday evening, the evening before we first saw Maharishi's lecture, and he was in great spirits.
I understand that this afternoon Maharishi conferred with you all. Could I ask you what advice he offered you?
He told us not to get overwhelmed by grief, and to whatever thoughts we have of Brian, to keep them happy, because any thoughts we have of him will travel to him wherever he is.
The band released a TV film on BBC, Magical Mystery Tour, and its soundtrack. But both fans and critics didn't like the movie and its plot. For the first time, the Beatles had tasted defeat. In 1968, John, Paul, George and Ringo flew to Rishikesh in India and stayed there from February until April, studying and meditating with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. But a scandal involving Mahesh Yogi made them leave India.
We made a mistake.
You think other people are making a mistake of going to see you now?
That's up to them.
And we thought...
What? We're human,
What do you mean by a mistake?
That's all,
We thought there was more to him than there was, But he's human. And for a while we thought he wasn't, Thought he was,
It's a business concerning records, films and electronics. And as a sideline, whatever it's called, manufacturing or whatever. But we want to set up a system whereby people who just want to make a film about anything don't have to go on their knees in somebody's office, probably yours,
be happening in the Psychedelic Social Centre. And the beautiful people of London made their flower power way to Beatles, George and John's with it, Aladdin's Cave. Only they call it Apple. It's a new kind of boutique in Baker Street, catering for specialized tastes. George and John described their new venture as a kind of psychedelic Garden of Eden for lovers of hippie gear with all the trappings of beautiful living. After explaining that, George thought he'd take it easy. He was lucky he could find the chair. So he settled back to listen to the latest kind of shop-warming music as played by the group who designed the store. They call themselves The Fool.
They founded their own record label, Apple Corporations, with the aim to discover new music talent and to produce their own songs. Their ninth album, simply titled The Beatles, is commonly referred to as the White Album. Ringo had left the group during the recording sessions, and Paul had to fill in on some of the drum parts.
Did you ever see a time when, in fact, you were...
There was a great deal of tension within the group after the making of the White Album. The four musicians had begun to explore different musical paths, especially John, who had released an album with his wife-to-be Yoko Ono called Unfinished Music No. 1, Two Virgins.
No one can hear us, you know what I mean? So for us to perform, it's difficult, gets difficult each time.
You mean they don't listen to you, and therefore you don't want to do that?
Oh yeah, we want to do it, but if we're not listened to, then, and we can't even hear ourselves, then we can't improve in that. We can't get any better. So we're trying to get better with things like recording.
The band came back together in 1969 and started shooting a film that was supposed to portray the writing and recording process of their next album, Let It Be. But the tension within the group was also caught on celluloid, and the band members were annoyed by the constant presence of cameramen. The making of the movie was stopped, and the band went to the Apple Savile Row studios to finish recording. The sessions concluded in the famous rooftop concert, an impromptu gig on top of the Apple building that was eventually ended by the police. This was the very last time the Beatles performed live together. In the end of 1969, the Fab Four met again to make their final record, Abbey Road. It was released shortly after and before Let It Be, which was still being worked on by producer Phil Spector. John had already left the band in November of 1969, but the official breakup of the Beatles was only announced when Paul walked out of the sessions on the 10th of April 1970. There are people who say that the Beatles were just a trend, a group of talented, good-looking guys who thrilled young girls with their love songs. But the Beatles were more than just an enormously successful band. Their later work displays their musical ingenuity, but songs from the early period already give glimpses of their brilliance. This group not only inspired a generation and thousands of musicians. The Beatles also taught us to express what's on our minds, to look inside ourselves, and most important, to always keep our sense of humor. The Beatles gave the world more than just music. They were a group of individuals who helped to shape the world we live in.
Tomorrow, is there any road to go? Will you still answer no? Oh, I'll wait for tomorrow. I'll be there where I belong. If it's right or if it's wrong, tomorrow I'll be there. Will we meet on the way or at the end? Tomorrow your cats could be high or low, and if it's really time to go, I will go. What will come, no one knows, just time will show. What was, you will forget, no regrets. Tomorrow